Good afternoon. We are here to announce the arrest of 61-year-old George Thomas Jr. for the 1988 abduction, rape, sodomy of a 22-year-old young woman when he was 26 years old in 1988. Closure is a term that police departments, police chiefs across the country probably use a little bit too often because we use it when an arrest is made. We use it when a defendant is convicted. We use it when a defendant is found guilty and sentenced. But closure is really not a representative description of how victims feel, even many years later. So this is another chapter for the victim in this case, and undoubtedly it's a lifetime of trauma and healing that our victim, like other victims, go through after brutal, vicious crimes like this one that you're going to hear about today. So in this case, justice is delayed, but justice is not denied. I'm joined by Major Ed O'Carroll, who's the Bureau Chief of Major Crimes for the Fairfax County Police Department. And we're also joined, gratefully, by Detective Dick Klein. Detective Klein joined the FCPD in 1980. He retired in 2007, and Dick was the detective assigned to this case. Some of you may also recognize Dick for his 15-year stint as a DJ personality on WMZQ 98.7. Dick Klein has meant a lot to the Fairfax County Police Department and to the greater National Capital Region for many years, and Dick certainly has a story to tell about this case, as do we. This predator is under arrest. He's charged with the vicious crimes that he committed so many years ago, and he's in a jail cell. He'll spend this Thanksgiving and hopefully many Thanksgivings incarcerated for the crimes that he committed. I'll turn it over to Major O'Carroll, and then we'll stand ready to answer any questions you may have. Major.
Thank you, Chief. As introduced, I'm Major Ed O'Carroll. I'm the Bureau Commander of Major Crime, Cyber, and Forensics for the Fairfax County, Virginia Police Department. A 22-year-old woman was getting off work. This was August 24th, 1988, the Skyline Mall, 5195 Leesburg Pike here in Fairfax County, Virginia. She was walking towards her car as her shift ended. Two offenders approached the lone victim in the parking lot near the garage and attacked her. The victim was forced into her vehicle and made to drive to a secluded location in the Northern Virginia area here in the DMV. The victim was led to a wooded area. Both men raped her before, again, forcing her back into her car to drive to yet another secluded location and raped her again. This is a horrible, tragic, and profoundly horrifying series of events. Now, the victim thankfully was able to escape in her car and fled the scene following the second assault. Uniformed Fairfax County police officers were dispatched and responded to give her aid that night after this brutal assault. And an abundant amount of forensic evidence was collected from the scene, including fingerprints that were on her vehicle, a 1987 Ford Escort. As the chief introduced, we're blessed to have Detective Dick Klein here today. He responded out on that night. Now retired, Dick, thank you for being with us today, was assigned as the lead detective. Now, the victim provided Detective Klein and his team details of what one of the offenders looked like. And through that work, a composite sketch was produced and widely distributed throughout the community. Detective Klein and his team received a lot of tips with possible suspect information, and they were all followed up on. No arrests were made. As the years passed, the FCPD never forgot about this case. And as DNA evidence and the science behind these cases developed, DNA profiles foreign to the victim were extracted from the forensic evidence collected and searched against the Virginia DNA databank. The profiles were also submitted to the National DNA databank. Still, no hits. Forensic evidence was resubmitted over the decades. We always hoped for a forensic development. Then a break comes. An astute FCPD fingerprint examiner matched a fingerprint that was found on the victim's vehicle to a fingerprint on an unrelated new Alexandria City arrest record that was on file. Now we have a match. After the first fingerprint match, we did a workup and we saw that the offender linked by the fingerprint had an older brother. A direct comparison from a print lifted off the Ford Escort led to a second identification. What we had uncovered is the younger of the two brothers was deceased. Detectives pulled the blood cards associated with the autopsy and the medical examiner's report. Advanced DNA analysis confirmed that the deceased man, Gregory Allen Thomas, was one of the two offenders, the DNA contributors, in the 1988 rape. So now on to the brother. He's alive, well, and living in Arlington, and we're hot on his trail. Detectives obtained a discarded DNA sample from George Thomas Jr. Forensic testing confirmed that the second foreign DNA contributor from the evidence recovered in 1988 was his. Yesterday, November 21st, deputies with the United States Marshal Service, with the assistance of Metro Transit Police and the Fairfax County Police Department, arrested the now 61-year-old George Thomas Jr. He's charged with 2 counts of rape, 1 count of sodomy, and 1 count of abduction. He was taken to the Montgomery County Detention Center and appropriately booked. Victim specialists from our Major Crimes Bureau Victim Services Division have been assigned to ensure the victim is receiving the appropriate care and resources. And a special thank you to Victim Specialist Kirkland, who's with our victim today. To our survivor, I'm sorry you endured this vicious crime so many years ago. Justice and my entire cold case team, Detective Christian, Sergeant Horton, retired Detective Dick Klein, never lost hope. To the team I proudly work for, thank you for never giving up. I'm proud of them, these amazing and dedicated detectives and professional staff. I'm proud of each and every one of you. And to our survivor, I'm proud of you. To the former lead detective from 34 years ago, Detective Klein, thank you for believing our victim then and believing her now. You know, they worked so hard to find the offender over the decades. And to the team at the Department of Forensic Science, we do appreciate your behind-the-scenes work and the efforts with testing. Special thanks. We really appreciate it. We do have amazing lab people that oftentimes are behind the scenes on these amazing breaks. And to the fingerprint examiner, that's amazing work. The living offender, Mr. Thomas, who does enjoy a presumption of innocence, remains held on a no bond status. He and his brother, who if he was alive, he would be arrested too, might have been involved in other cases throughout the Northern Virginia area. We want to know about those cases too. It's never too late to come forward, to share, and to report. You will be believed. These heinous crimes have no statute of limitations, and the Major Crimes Bureau detectives can be reached at 703-246-7800, option 8. Again, that's 703-246-7800, option 8. Contact the Fairfax County Police Department if you have any information about this case or other cases. Detectives are standing by. The chief, Detective Klein, and myself will take any questions that you may have this time.
What was the cause or manner of death for the younger brother who was one of the assailants?
Yeah, so my detectives have looked at those circumstances. I'm not going to share that detail. It's not relevant to the investigation. He died young. Again, he's the younger of the two offenders. But this case is unique because it's good old-fashioned police work that was done in 1988 with fingerprints gave us the break that we needed.
Can you talk about the case that generated this second fingerprint that let them compare it?
Yeah, so it was an unrelated arrest that warranted his fingerprints to be taken in Alexandria City. When these prints had been run previously, we just didn't get any hits. So there's two things that have unfolded over the decades. One is the advancements in the fingerprint technology realm. We're able to do more and more with prints that are blurry, not as clear. The science behind fingerprint analysis is amazing, and it's gotten better over the decades. So we're fortunate that arrest took place. It gave us the break that we needed, and one brother tied into the next brother, and then to lock seal this thing on not one front but two, the DNA is a direct match.
Were there any other arrests for either of the brothers other than that one in Alexandria? First of all, did you say what he was actually charged with in Alexandria?
I did not. It was an unrelated arrest that just warranted his fingerprints to be taken. By statute, there's certain crimes that warrant fingerprints to be taken by the arresting police officer for the booking process. There are some that don't warrant that. It's a summons and signature, but it was unrelated to these crimes. And I'm sorry, your first question?
Did he have any other priors?
Yeah, so both these individuals had police involvement. As I mentioned, it varied at different times. The fingerprint case that we got in 2020 was the break that we were looking for.
Drew Wilder.
Yeah, Detective Klein, if you could talk a little bit about how this feels for you, and has this ever happened that a case that you worked on back when you were in the department was solved years later?
This has happened several times since I've retired. Just about a month and a half ago, we got a similar, or I received a similar call from these gentlemen advising that we had a 1989 case that was linked with the new technology, the new DNA technology, for years and years. And if you're very fortunate, you solve them within the next, year. But there are times where you have no idea, no help from the public, and it's very difficult. But it does give you a sense of resolve to finally have some closure for this victim.
And I would imagine that when you're working a case like that, and maybe the others, that you referenced, that kind of personal attachment that you develop professionally with that case, and maybe even with the victims that you're working alongside, to be able to, point to the work that was done by you and your team back then as helping and being kind of the catalyst to make that happen now has got to be, I don't know if satisfying is the word, but.
It is rewarding that even though it's, more than 30 years later, it's a blessing. It's a blessing from above that finally some justice will prevail.
Could you spell your last name, sir?
CLINE.
And you retired when?
07.
Major O'Carroll, can you talk a little bit about the I guess kind of the timeline, the process for, you mentioned that, your guys are revisiting these cases and looking for new hits. How often are you running prints? And was it just kind of a stroke of luck that he had a recent arrest and it just came up again? Or are you doing those once a month? How's that work?
Yeah, so each case stands on its own merit, depending upon the amount of evidence. And Detective Klein, both he and his team back in 1988 got it right. They collected the best evidence. And again, here we are 34 years later with all the dots connecting. So thank you, Dick, for doing the right thing back then. But we have cold cases. We have too many cold cases. We're working on solving them. The chief and I have been before you on several of them. We have a lot more to go to have mission accomplished. One of my goals with my team is the work that we've been doing is to make the cold case obsolete, and we clear the file room of the dozens of homicides and hundreds of unsolved sexual assault cases. So we use private partners sometimes. We've talked about some of those partnerships. We used forensic genetic genealogy to get breaks in cases. This was fingerprints being looked at and rerun. We've done it several times on this case over the decades, and we're doing it on other cases as well. So we are brushing off the dust and getting cases looked at. Our cold case team is small. We have 4 detectives. My goal for 2023 is to expand that number. I'm committed to that because I do think the solvability in 2022 and beyond is tenfold than what it was a decade or 2 decades ago. So we're working on it. It's a constant resubmission of evidence, both in the fingerprint realm and in the DNA forensic world. Things that you couldn't get DNA on 8 or 10 years ago, there's a possibility you can today.
You mentioned Metro Police involved. Why were they involved, and where, I guess, was the location of the arrest? Because you mentioned U.S. Marshals as well.
Yep, he was on a Metro stop.
He was riding Metro, or
I don't know if he was actually on the train or I believe he was on the stop, but he was with Metro Transit. So
passenger, an employee.
Passenger, and that's the partnerships we have. We've got great relationships throughout the DMV. At all levels, from our rank and file on the road to our chief. Everyone is connected because we don't work alone, and the partnerships help. We thought he'd be bedded down in Arlington. We've been at his residence times prior. As I said, we collected DNA that helped us get that break. So it's partnerships that get the job done, and we've said it dozens of times. The Marshal Service and all the agencies throughout the national capital region. We're one team, especially when we get an arrest warrant like we did in this case. Yes.
Where exactly did you guys arrest him? And it was yesterday, you said, right?
It was yesterday. I don't have the exact notation on which stop it was. We'll get that to you. My public affairs team will get that to you. Absolutely.
Virginia or DC?
No, he was taken. It was in Maryland. He was taken to the Montgomery County Adult Detention Center. So if you look at the Metro map, it was in the confines of Metro, but it was in Montgomery County. So we're working on extradition to bring him from the state of Maryland. It sounds like you just got your answer. We're working on extradition. Our detectives will travel to Montgomery County. There'll be an extradition, and he'll be brought back in shackles and brought into the Fairfax County Adult Detention Center. This case will be tried in Fairfax County, and very confident with the abundance of evidence, we'll have the multiple convictions. I'm glad he's off the streets.
You mentioned that after you developed this DNA profile based on the brother, and you started putting him under surveillance at that point, is that when you obtained this other DNA sample to confirm?
Yes.
How do you, what does that mean? I mean, to just find something that he touched or threw away, or?
Yeah, so he might have smoked his last cigar. They're not giving cigars out of the jail. So we witnessed him discard something. We collected it, and we did forensic evidence. If it wasn't a match, we would have moved on. It was a match. He raped our victim in 1988.
Has he admitted to any of this or had any conversation with investigators about it?
I'm sorry?
Has he had any conversation with you guys about it, admitted that he was involved at all?
So when we took him into custody, again, the arrest just happened yesterday afternoon. So we did interview him. He made no statement to us that he was involved, made claim that he had no idea what we were talking about. I beg to differ. My detectives beg to differ, and the evidence is abundant and clear. He'll have some tough explaining to do in one of the courtrooms at the Fairfax County courthouse. Any final questions? So, Chief?
Just to kind of drive home the point of good police work at the scene of this crime in 1988, and Major O'Carroll mentioned the collection of a fingerprint. And collecting fingerprints has been around for a long, long time in policing, but now we're better able to enhance it and look at it a second, third, 10th time. Thank you all.